The following podcast contains subject matter that may be unsuitable for more sensible viewers. Views expressed here do not reflect that of any community that you would want to be a part of. Listener discretion is mandatory. Mama, what does trans mean?
No. Yes.
Yeah, way better.
Way better.
Okay, so Mads, since you are now on the East Coast, you get to enjoy the Roxodus Festival in Ontario. So Nickelback, Collective Soul, Big Wreck, Who Fucks, and Headpins. Second day,
God.
Leonard Skinner, Cheap Trick, Billy Idol, Blondie. Next day, Kid Rock, Alice Cooper, and Peter Frampton.
No.
And Sunday, Aerosmith, Matthew Good, and Theory of a Dead Man, and I, Mother Earth.
Oh my God.
So
I, Mother
Earth? This is what you get
Earth?
to enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't listened to I, Mother Earth in forever.
No one has listened to I, Mother Earth in forever.
Even I, Mother Earth forgets what fucking songs they wrote and record.
I don't know any of these bands.
Well, it's because you're so small and young.
I'm a fucking dipshit.
Just a tiny baby.
And hello! Welcome again to Tranifesto, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Bad Representation. So in light of last week, which you all probably heard, we reviewed the movie Girl, and so this week we decided to take a bit of a lighter tone to the show, just because we definitely needed the break. If any of you didn't listen to that show, I would highly suggest you go back and listen to it. Or don't. Actually, we're completely fine with that
Please
as well.
don't listen to this show.
It's just not worth
at all.
Yeah, don't actually listen to the show. Just turn it off. Go listen to literally any other podcast. But
Not any other podcast.
Yeah, well, no.
Some of them are canceled.
We'll listen to like Pod Save America or the Oprah Network. I think Oprah has her own show. Where she just
I hear that Bernie Sanders is starting a podcast. Chapo, go on Bernie.
No. He's on Red Scare. Okay, just remember, just get this straight.
Cancelled. Bernie, come on Tranifesto.
I just want to let everyone know that I am on Tranifesto. I support trans rights and not ironing your goddamn flags.
Bernie said trans rights.
Danish girl. Not that bad. Relatively speaking.
Compared to Girl. So before we get into the I say meat of the show, but still, we'll get to the movie and stuff like that shortly. But we
This
actually
show has so much meat.
Oh, there's just a throbbing mess
This
of meat.
show is hung.
We'll get to the meat.
Oh yes. But before we get to the meat, we would actually like to issue a rare Tranifesto apology. As longtime listeners of the show will remember, about I think episode 1 or 2, one of our hosts called out one Graham Linham for being transphobic.
Is it Linham or Linehan?
Is it? I don't. It's
Linham?
Linner, like Leonard Skinner.
Glinner. It's
At
Glinner.
Linner.
Glinner.
So,
yeah.
yes, Graham Linham has been promoted from transphobic bigot to friend of the pod after he came out and said he has never been transphobic in his life.
Yes, thanks to the Irish Times. Graham Glinner clarified his position that he actually is not just for gay rights or trans people. Is that he himself is actually working on a new surgery to cut down the wait time for trans women to get bottom reassignment surgery.
He has
That's
in
what
fact,
he's doing. That's what he's doing instead of writing comedy.
He has in fact come out with a list of all of the ally stuff that he has been doing over the past decade, which includes...
Yeah, let's read that list.
Number 1, he has performed over 6,000 gender reassignment surgeries, most of which occurred in the past month.
Yep. I get number 2 here. He personally has escorted over 5,000 trans women to the bathroom and made sure to look in the stalls before letting them do their business. And he makes sure to watch them while they do their thing so nobody attacks them.
Number 3, he did a 72-hour stream of Conker's Bad Fur Day, which is surprising because that game doesn't take that long, like, on anything. But he's just that dedicated. And
during that stream, he raised several $100,000 for mermaids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and personally delivered it to them in silver ingots. My libertarian Discord group was actually just talking about this, and
Graham Linham has also engaged in a thorough and heroic struggle session and denounced himself as a former capitalist roader.
And
he's a committed Maoist now.
yep, I also see here listed that he was the backup cowbell on Transgender Dysphoria Blues. So that's good for him, getting in with Laura Jane.
And he literally invented transgenderism.
Yeah, no, there.
Also, he is not writing the IT crowd anymore.
No. His talents need to be served elsewhere, which is working from home to better promote trans rights and further that. So to Graham, Linham, Glinner, Growliter,
Come on the pod.
come on the pod. We love you. Thank you for supporting us, and sorry for the misunderstanding.
Thank you for saying trans rights.
Thanks
Graham
for throwing
Linham
down,
said
Father.
trans rights.
Yeah. That was good. I like that.
So, without further ado,
Yeah, let's fucking get on into this shit. So, well, now that we're done being back on our bullshit, hi everyone, this is Madeline. I am one of the hosts here. My Twitter is at rabbit_is_dead, or rabbit_is_dead. Fucked up my own name. I am joined today by...
I'm Amelia Blair at Lavender Ashtray on Twitter.
And I'm Reed Carter at Reed Carter.
And one of us is now on the East Coast, so vive la belle Provence!
Can it be me?
Yeah, you want to come on over here? I got some cute poutine boys for you.
Love me some poutine boys.
Some
I'm
separatist
there,
boys.
I'm there, but I overshot, and I'm in New Brunswick, and I don't know how to get out.
You don't.
You
You
can't-
can never get out.
Yeah, they actually don't speak English there. They just speak some weird fucking... the khakis.
It's like Maine, but everybody speaks French. It's terrible.
Anyways, so moving on to the actual movie that we're watching today. So again, we wanted to make it lighter, but we also wanted to tackle a larger subject, which we think is pretty applicable to the show. Kind of a where we are to where we are at. So to start off with, the movie that we watched this week is Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Which,
Unfortunately.
Yes.
yeah,
Ace Ventura, finally some asexual representation on Tranifesto.
yeah, no, we were hurting for it. So,
So, 1994 film.
yeah, starring the one, the only, the Mussolini granddaughter infuriating
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey in the news, king,
Yeah,
denouncing fascism and Benito Mussolini, an infuriating former Playboy model and pop star. What's her name? Mussolini, his granddaughter?
Wait, I thought she was a member of parliament. Is she a member of parliament?
Oh, she's also that, yes.
God.
Former Playboy model, former pop star famous in
Oh
Japan,
my god.
member of parliament.
Wait, a pop star
fascist,
famous in
and
Japan?
granddaughter.
No, you
This
can't
is
just
actually true.
you can't just skirt that past me. What do you mean pop star in Japan?
She released these two like bizarre albums that I've seen bumping around that I've listened to.
Oh my god.
Is it fire?
No, it's not like the worst thing I've ever heard. It's better than the Aerosmith in this movie's soundtrack.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
no.
Aerosmith. I'll tell you what. It's better than Hitler's granddaughter's album. but
Here on the
we're-
show, we denounce
Yeah.
Stalin's granddaughter, Hitler's granddaughter, and Mussolini's granddaughter.
Yeah.
But it's worse than Jessica Hirohito's mixtape, which is fire.
Come on the pod. So this movie, Ace Ventura, came out in 1994, has a weird cult following among the worst men you'll ever meet.
Yeah. And like I guess like to some degree like, you know, kids from that era, cuz like I'll remember
Yeah.
like in my memory this movie was a lot better and I watched it when I was like fucking 7 years old.
Yeah, it was like a cultural, it's at this point it's a cultural artifact, but it was like a cornerstone of mid-90s culture, which is bizarre looking back on it because it's just a shit movie, but
Yeah.
it really does sort of feel like the pure distilled id of the 1990s.
I mean, it's no Biodome, but
Oh god, that is such a good movie. By the way, this movie is labeled under thriller action, just so we're clear.
Well, it certainly is a thriller.
Yeah, from start to finish. When the Dolphin mascot of Miami's NFL team is abducted, Ace Ventura, a zany private investigator...
Zany,
there's that word.
he is zany.
A zany whip of miracle... No, fuck it, we're cutting that.
Zany.
A zany private investigator who specializes in finding missing animals looks into the case. Soon, Miami Dolphins players are kidnapped too, including star player Dan Marino, played by Dan Marino, making Ace's sleuth work.
Oh, is that who that was?
Yeah, I know. It's weird. Jim Carrey also played himself, which I think is interesting. Working with Dolphins representative Melissa Robinson, Courtney Cox. By the way, Friends is a terrible show. I don't care who fights me on this. It's fucking awful, and you all know it. Ace closes...
Oh, God, yeah. Friends, just like to pause and talk about the 90s a bit more.
Yeah, no, please.
Friends is a shit bad show, and you only like it because you're performing nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's a shit show. You don't like it. Nobody likes it. Stop talking about Friends. Stop watching Friends. Stop pretending to like Friends. Stop making me feel like I'm supposed to like Friends.
It's 2019. None of us have friends anymore. But to finish, but not before many ridiculous misadventures, which is again misadventures and zany.
Ridiculous misadventures. So what happens in this movie is Ace Ventura is a pet detective, which he like finds lost animals, I guess.
Which I guess it's a job.
It's a job.
It's a living.
He finds lost animals, but he does it through like broken windows policing. And like theft, but
he doesn't play by the rules,
and like sexual extortion.
Yeah, what the fuck was that opening sex blowjob scene where he's like fucking holding on to like
truly bizarre?
Yeah, he's
given the tone of the movie, you need to know that he is heterosexual. Like they really need to lay that into
heterosexual.
you.
I need to go talk to someone who's only 7 years older for me because I was a kid in the 90s. I need to ask if this is actually how people had sex in the 90s, just by like wearing.
This is still how we have sex.
Tropical shirts and holding on to like.
Well,
the
yeah,
door frame.
sex is a commodity. Okay, so what happens is he finds this person's a dog, and then she pulls like that fucking like bad
However,
old porn thing where it's
Oh,
just like,
how could I ever
pay
help
for
you?
this? Yeah, and then gives him a like wacky blowjob.
Yeah, so some dumb shit happens, and he makes a bunch of faces, and it turns out that the dolphin mascot of the football team has been kidnapped, and he's put on the case by their PR manager, Courtney Cox, who is perfect.
We do like
Too good
Courtney.
for this movie.
Too good for this movie.
Loved her in Scream.
And so he begins to search for this dolphin, discovering...
Being informed by a cop played by Tone Loc, who is, aside from Courtney Cox, the only good part of this movie.
And so he finds like a piece of a ring that's like given only to football players from the Super Bowl from this one year, and so he hunts down every player on the team, but none of them have the ring, or none of the ring is broken.
And don't forget he tracks each one of them down through a zany misadventure montage.
Oh yeah, there were some great goofs.
Oh
if
yeah,
you like
just
goofs.
You know what, it really tickles my funny boner.
Lots of slapstick in this movie. So eventually he discovers that the broken ring piece belongs to a football player who turned out to have failed the final kick at the Super Bowl and retired in shame and exile and went off to live alone in a hut where he was like bullied relentlessly and then disappeared from a mental institution after having a mental breakdown. And after that, gradually Ace Ventura, Sherlock Holmes style, pieces together the fact that the football player Finkel is in fact the same woman who's in charge of the police.
Whoa.
Yeah, this like
Spoiler
police
alert.
lieutenant who's
Spoiler
been trying
alert.
to shut him down the entire time.
This movie is so inane. But
Look, I feel
I'm
represented.
really
I think
not
that's
doing
my
a great job
transition
at explaining
story.
this movie. Like, how would you guys explain this movie?
I mean, no, that's about it.
Yeah, I can't. There's not much more substance to this. Like,
he like discovers that the police chief lady is a trans woman, and he at one point had like kissed her.
oh no,
And so he has like a freak out where he
burns his
like
clothes.
burns his clothes, like
eats a bunch of toothpaste.
Eats a ton of toothpaste, like 4 tubes of toothpaste, and like cries in the shower and vomits, which is like very, very woke of him. And then eventually he corners her and in front of a bunch of police forces her to strip down to prove that she's trans. And for almost the whole bit, it looks like he's going to be proven wrong. And all the cops are on her side. But then in a twist of fate, you can like see her tucking from behind. And so all the cops immediately turn on her.
Obviously we're like disgusted by the transphobia, but also like you learn how to tuck. You learn how to
hey,
do a
at
tuck
least
job.
at least
That's not how tucking works.
Well, it's at least a better job than what happened in Girl. So not
Honestly,
to say anything
no.
about
like she was significantly better at tucking.
Yeah, no. And then like after that reveal, all the cops and stuff like that start spitting and like gagging.
Yeah, and they immediately turn on her. She gets like pushed into the water. It's very brutal.
Yeah, which I mean, like obviously we are all in agreement that that was terrible, but I guess my question that I'm actually wondering about in terms of things, the whole idea of just like how would either of you feel about a situation in which the main character, imagine a best case scenario movie, like the whole identity kind of thing is based on them being trans. Like imagine a good like detective movie, or that this movie was somehow good, and like the plot twist being the fact that the character had transitioned. Like do you think that would be okay in a movie nowadays if it was like a new movie
made? The whole plot is like Sherlock Holmes clocks the tranny, like it's really, I think, malicious. Like if the plot twist is unveiling the fact that the character is trans is not very, I don't know, I think it's cheap.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Bree?
Which I'm thinking because like the thing that this reminds me of is like the close example I could think of is in Orange is the New Black. Laverne Cox's character is in prison for committing credit card fraud in order to fund her transition.
Right.
So essentially, like what you would have to do is have like maybe like a character that committed crimes like previously to fund transition, then disappeared, then came back after transition and is committing more crimes, and therefore the person has to like put the pieces together and figure out what that is, and which would be interesting because essentially you would have to be looking at transition as a thing that people do and something that would have to be could be taken into account in order to solve this mystery, as opposed to necessarily and it creates a logical reason for the person to do it, rather than in this film where it's a person who is already unstable, has a mental break, and then does this ridiculous thing and then commits more crimes.
Well, yeah, like he doesn't transition because he's trans. He transitions for this bizarre... He has a mental breakdown and wants to infiltrate the police, so he changes his identity. It's...
Yeah. So I think
fucking weird.
I think that it would I think it would be interesting if you did want to have a trans villain in a mystery thing. I think that would be interesting, especially like if it's made now and for a cis audience, like that's still not necessarily something that they would think of, but then if the person is like, oh shit, this is what happened, and like but not necessarily attributing their transition to like a mental break and giving them a logical reason for doing it.
My issue with that is I don't think that transition actually leaves a pretty hefty and bureaucratic paper trail.
That's true.
Like I think that cops, for instance, would not have a hard time solving that mystery. I think.
Well, that's true, but like a lot of trans people do shit like on the black market if like they can't get into the bureaucratic system. So that's
true.
There
but,
is
like,
there is a black
identity,
level there.
and it involves like changing your name or that kind of thing. Also, like I think it's really hard to go stealth, especially sort of in the modern era of online stuff. And so, like, I think it could be done. It just would have to be done really thoughtfully.
Yeah, like this scenario is like just if I had to pick a thing.
No, that's fair. It was just kind of like a, could it be done sort of thing. Another thing that was terrible about this movie in terms of just, it's not necessarily queer, but just like a quick call out. Just the scene where Jim Carrey's character is in the hospital and trying to get admitted.
Oh, Jesus. That was just...
Speaking of things
gross.
that were just acceptable in the 90s.
Which we'll get into, I think.
Yeah.
That scene where he's like trying to infiltrate the psychiatric hospital where Finkel had stayed to figure out why he had, or where he had gone after.
Yeah, just like
where he like pretends to be
like
to
a mentally
some kind
disabled person, and like was wearing a tutu and just making random noises and has like messed up hair, and is basically like the 90s caricature of a like mentally disabled person of whatever kind, which is like, this is definitely not like a unique thing for the time. It's just disgusting.
No,
like the ableism is just disgusting.
Ableist, grotesquely homophobic, grotesquely transphobic. Which is sort of why I said earlier that this movie is like the frothing id of the 90s, because all of this stuff in this movie is just so out in the open, you know, saying the quiet parts, like screaming it, you know, like, and it's so shamelessly offensive.
Well, this came
which I don't think most people realized when they were watching it, because it was the 90s and that was just what you did.
Yeah, well, wasn't it Silence of the Lambs came out just before this, or just...
Yeah, like a few years earlier was Silence of the Lambs, which is another sort of infamous trans representation that I think infected the cultural consciousness a lot more than it should have, which I think is a category I would place Ace Ventura in, where there isn't actually that much to talk about Ace Ventura and transness. It's just so, it had such a, I think, deep, infectious impact on how people viewed trans people for a long time.
Yeah, this is like, you know, kind of what I think it's like part of what we've gotten into in the conclusion of a lot of episodes we've done is the whole, I would not want this, even with the good things we've watched, I would not want it to be the first experience about trans people that a cis person would have.
Oh, 100%.
And this is super, super guilty for like a lot of like, you know, Gen Xers who are in positions of authority now.
Yeah.
It's this and Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, these were the movies that were a lot of people's first introduction to this concept. And what they were taught was, if you kiss a trans woman, the appropriate response to preserve your heterosexual masculinity,
which is so
to
fragile,
set your clothes on fire, vomit, swallow an entire tube of toothpaste, and cry in the shower, and then chew an entire thing of bubblegum at once.
Well, yeah, and
and then stalk her and undress her before a crowd of cops so that they can mock her.
It was and it's just the period of gay panic, which partially makes me wonder is like, are there examples of like, because I've seen people make the conclusion that sort of like we are now with trans people in culture sort of where gay people were in the 90s, where it's like they were starting to become accepted but were also not taken seriously.
I'm starting to think that actually we're doing better than that.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think so too, but it's just it's an observation I've heard, so I wanted to get your take on that.
No,
and
I've
if there's
heard
any
that too.
examples you can think of trans panic that is maybe separate from gay panic anytime recently.
Gay panic sort of refers to two things, I think. There's like the legal defense that is often used, or was often used, against like assaults and murder, which is analogous to like trans panic, where someone will assault or murder a trans woman to protect their masculinity because they've been trapped, which like continues today. But there's also gay panic as this like discursive explosion about about gayness in the 1990s at the height of the AIDS crisis, which is when this movie came out, when sort of queerness and gayness was forcing its way into the cultural consciousness and being discussed on a level it had never been before. Acceptance and discrimination were being thrown around much more openly and much more on the surface than they had before.
And it's interesting, like, because, you know, gay panic, it manifested in a lot of different ways, like, because obviously in this there's it's disgusting, and there's like a scene where he's like trying to like look for like he's investigating all of the football players who would have gotten the ring. That was his one piece of evidence. So there's one scene where he's like looking over in a urinal at this like football player and trying to look at his ring, and then like the other guy looks back and like smiles, and then Jim Carrey like tails it out of there, and the other guy does like a fucking like sissy like 90s gay like stereotype run after him.
Yeah, like Jim Carrey is staring at this guy's dick, but the funny part is that the guy is
so there's
gay.
a lot of that. There's
Like-
the sort of just making gayness out to be like a ridiculous joke. Like one of my favorite podcasts is Blink 155. And they talk
know.
about this a lot, where they just talk about, because Blink 182's entire career in the 90s was based off them making gay panic jokes. And just like them the entire time just being like, oh, fuck it, Tom's like such an idiot and he's going to go fuck some guys after the show. Haha, I'm going to go fuck some guys. Like that kind of stuff, which still like fits in because it's like, haha, it would be funny if that was true. But also like, that would also be it'd be funny because it's disgusting kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's like another facet of gay panic. And then but then also a lot of times like all perceptions of trans people were fit into gay panic. Like one example I'm thinking of is one of my favorite sitcoms was Scrubs. And there's a bit where there's like a young nurse that joins, and one of the older nurses, one of the main characters, is jealous of her. So she's like, I'm gonna start spreading rumors around that she's actually a man.
Yep. Or to bring it back around.
Yeah.
in
Friends is
let's
Friends is so
lampoon
bad.
Friends.
What's his face's dad or mom or something who's like a cross-dresser. That was like a running gag on Friends. I mean, Friends is sort of notoriously homophobic.
I'll be honest, I've watched like maybe 6 episodes.
This is just the episode where I really get into the fact that I hate Friends.
This all was an
Stop
intro
watching
into this.
Friends.
So let's all just ring on Chandler.
Well, that's the thing is like,
You don't like Friends. It's just the social performance of having
It's
of
deep
missing the
internalized
90s. Shut up.
misandry that makes you like Friends. That's what it is.
What you miss is not Friends. It is the pre 9/11 political landscape.
well, here's something that's interesting that I wanted to get your idea on is, I feel like all of this is a manifestation of the I'm fine with it, I just don't want it to be around me sort of attitude towards things, which obviously trans people get a lot. Like I am fine with it, but I don't want to think about it. And
I would actually
like,
argue
all
that's been around since the beginning of Stonewall with like Marsha P. Johnson, and the whole idea of just like, one of the big leaders of Stonewall was a trans woman of color, and basically like it gets erased most of the time. There was that Stonewall movie that came out as well, and it was a bunch of white gay guys.
Yeah, well, I think that that's sort of a different thing. I feel like that's more into like not it's more like different, like centering different communities at the center of movements. But what this more reminds me of is like, I feel like if you had asked anybody who made these jokes, anybody who wrote these jokes, like, aren't you being kind of homophobic? Like, I cannot imagine any of them not trying to defend themselves and saying, oh, I'm just making a joke, I'm actually fine with gay people. And we still get a lot of that, like, when you're dealing with trans people today. And I'm wondering, like, what is that bit about people in society that makes people do this?
What, like, just make the jokes?
Well,
yeah, like that makes people like process their discomfort through this, like, without any like amount of self-consciousness.
Well, I think I use humor a lot for a lot of the stuff I go through. I don't have particularly the greatest past, but like I use a lot of dark humor for me to cope, to understand something, and it's basically it's a lens that makes me feel comfortable, things that are uncomfortable to me. And I mean, like, I think that's fine for like a lot of things, like humor is, what was it? A spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. So humor is a way that a lot of us kind of get through things, and especially dark humor. But I think the same thing applies in this scenario, where you basically have hetero people who are scared of this because it makes them question their own self. So that's a very uncomfortable realization, because if it didn't mean anything to them, they would pay no attention to it. But Rhea, I think this is like a conversation you and I had in the car the other day, where it's just like transition and being gay are all things that go against the status, and every time that we do it, it creates a sense where people who would otherwise not think about such things now have to do it, and that's why you get jokes like this. I mean, like, part of it's short-sightedness, but
and so it's like protective.
Sorry. Yeah, exactly.
And so it's, like,
they do it as like a screen, because when you stop making jokes about something, you can take it seriously. But if you're perpetually in a state of making jokes, you never have to humanize it.
I agree. I think that sort of protective aspect of humor, where you can kind of shield yourself from the social other by masking your discomfort in humor, is part of it. I think there's also sort of what Rhea was mentioning about, it's just a joke, like, lighten up. Like, I'm fine with gay people, I'm just making a joke. I'm fine with trans people, I'm just making a joke. I identify as an attack helicopter, but I'll call you whatever pronouns make you happy.
It's your dad.
I think that's like the structure of this structured disavowal where nobody thinks that they are a racist or a sexist or a homophobe or a transphobe. No one deep down believes that about themselves. Well, some people do. Most people who don't. They think I'm a good person, and my views are normal and okay and progressive, and I accept everybody. And so humor presents an opportunity for them to express their homophobia or transphobia or racism or sexism in a context where they can immediately disavow it, and they can say it and let it out without having to own it fully because it's just a joke. I don't mean everything I joke about. Humor and comedy is like a fictitious exercise when really what you're doing is you are expressing a view and then being too cowardly to commit to it.
I was just gonna say, and this is coming from us, we use humor on the show all the time for pretty much everything.
No, we're stone serious all the time on Tranifesto.
Welcome to the show where we review Ace Ventura. No,
it's bad.
It's bad. This is a bad show. He's a bad man.
0 out of 10. Next episode.
Watch Friends instead. No, just bash Friends. No, but even when you bring it up with family, it's just it's you use humor also as a way so you don't have to understand something.
Yeah.
Generally a lot of people too that who make that whole line about well, I'm just making a joke, you shouldn't be offended, are also the same people where if you're the cis-hets, what do they know? And they're just hey, you can't do that. It's well, buddy, there is a sensitive it's I guess timing with humor. I guess that's the best, because I like I like comedy, I like that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's like dark, edgy humor, which it's not really funny, I guess, fine to me, but like timing is part of it as well. Like there's lots of stuff in our own past, like, be it dating or relationships or stuff like that we joke about here in the show, in person. And it's been long enough that we can make those jokes now, but because we've distanced ourselves from the actual event. But yeah, exactly. It's just as soon as you get home.
Well, what I'm getting out of this is I never really thought about it this way, is that, when we make dark humor about trans stuff, whenever we make edgy jokes at the expense of trans people and the expense of ourselves, mm-hmm. It's making jokes about something that we sort of the anxiety that we have to live through, deal with every day, and we're always thinking about just a little bit, and sort of have the experience to view it as the absurdity that it is, because especially being trans is a fundamentally absurd notion. But when people outside it, when cis people do it, a lot of the times it's to avoid having to confront the real shit and the absurdity of it, which is it's the difference between when we make a joke and or when Ricky Gervais does it. They're two fundamentally things, because we are qualified, because we are making fun of something that we have to live with every day, as opposed to something that we read about in a newspaper and think is stupid. There's a difference between thinking something is stupid and thinking something's absurd.
It's context. I mean, it's the same reason none of us can use the N-word, because if we use it, it's a completely different context. And
plus we are not qualified to make jokes about at the expense of people of color, because we don't have to live that, and they know what is ridiculous and know what is absurd about that experience.
Mm-hmm.
There's that ContraPoints video, The Darkness, which expresses a lot of this, and sort of the structure of joke as tension release, or tension and the punchline as a release of that tension. So for us to make a joke about transness, the tension is the experience of discomfort of living in a transphobic society, of navigating that, and that tension can be released by making a joke about it. Whereas perhaps for a cis person, the tension is the tension of discomfort and disgust that they feel towards the presence of trans people in society. And the release is the punchline that they make at the expense of trans people.
It's because obviously we don't live in constant terror, but there are reminders every day. It's in little stuff that we do. If we go use the bathroom, if we I avoid public swimming pools because it's terrifying to go to them. And so, yeah, like we have to make these jokes. I make these jokes all the time, just my old family, the ones that say that they're, completely supportive of this, the few members that I do have, even just like constantly on the phone, they dead name me. One of my family members, I'm going to make nameless just in case they happen to come across this part, will dead name me, but also refer me to me as she. So that's actually kind of funny now that I think about it. But if we don't laugh, we
but
cry.
I'm also like wondering, is there an acceptable version of a joke from a cis person of them addressing the fact that they are made uncomfortable by this, but like in a genuine self-reflective way, in the sense that like, this is something I've never had to think about, and it's like, I don't want to get it, but based on my like point of reference, I am having trouble getting it.
I mean,
which is, I understand,
which is that's because
that's a genuine feeling, and that's a genuine anxiety that I would understand a cis person to say, whereas like, I don't get it, I want to get it, but like, it is like so outside of my point of reference.
Well,
like,
if you're supposed
would the trans community accept jokes about that?
I could actually think of one joke where that, off the top of my head, where that would fly, at least in my opinion. And again, execution is the, not necessarily content, but execution is always the risk involved in these jokes. So assuming it is the best version of this joke, I could see it being a cis guy who never had to think about it, one day meets a woman, like falls in love maybe, or is an amazing girl, ends up having sex, and through that realization in that moment where he's like, I've seen a penis for the first time, and in this moment I'm asking myself, what do I know about these things? Like, I don't even know what to do with a penis. I've never had to have sex with a penis. Like, that would kind of be funny. And then but through that, also at the very end of it, the punchline being like, he realizes and becomes a better person, understanding that just like, what, she was beautiful and she's still the best woman I know, sort of thing.
Is in that episode of Zombieland Saga when Saki is like, as soon as she finds out that Lily is trans, is like, what was your old name? That's the butchest name I've ever heard. You're such a tiny person and you used to be that. That's hilarious. And then like pretty immediately like starts defending her and like, and recognize that stuff. But like that's an interest. I think that's an interesting way to do it, is to like explore it through the context of the character who's making the joke, but then obviously like coming to a good conclusion, and then creating a guidance for like other people who are sharing in that to get to that point.
It's as long as the punchline stays away from she's a man, like as long as the trans person in the joke is not the punchline, maybe the journey or something like that, then you're generally pretty okay. Like that's the idea with humor in general. Like if you make a joke targeted at someone's I guess what makes them different.
Like don't punch
you can punch up, or you can punch inward, as long as the joke is on yourself, or your self-insert.
Like can you punch up at yourself? Like, can the punchline be how stupid and ignorant and how much of a chud you are?
As long as you're not excusing it. As long as you have a visible path outward of like being shitty.
Yeah.
I think an entire bit based on someone's own like realizing what an idiot they are compared to like understanding things in the world. Like it's almost like a joke, like a routine based on self-discovery. That would be fucking hilarious.
It's just like very cautious.
Yeah, I don't know if the trans community would go for that though. I do not know if there's a version.
Well, to be fair, we are still developing our sense of humor. I love us, but we're still figuring that out.
It's true.
I don't have a sense of humor.
Not at all. This entire show is just, it's the vagina monologues, but that's transphobic.
What I want to talk about is this a good movie?
No, it's not.
Like,
it's
not like about the transness.
Sure.
Let's talk about the movie itself, which I think it's shit.
But it's so bad.
But it's
weirdly,
awful.
A lot of people have fond memories of this movie. I think it's just the fact that you losers watched it when you were 7, and it had like dick jokes in it, and so you thought that was like the height of comedy, and you just haven't seen it since.
Like, what was height of comedy for you? What was your height of comedy as a kid?
My aunt showed me Zoolander.
Zoolander holds up. I like Jim Carrey. I like stupid 90s movies, and this movie is fucking terrible by like any standards.
Literally, there are 2 punchlines in Ace Ventura. The first punchline is Jim Carrey did a face. Look at the Jim Carrey face. He's doing it again. oh my god, what a funny face. And the second joke is, she's a fucking tranny. Ha 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 ha. Right?
Yeah.
That's the two jokes
Like,
in Ace Ventura.
The alrighty then bit was brought in from his stand-up. Like, that wasn't even part of the thing. It was just like, let's make Jim
for
Carrey
fuck's
be
sake.
the
Just-
Jim Carreyest Jim Carrey that he could be, and also
It's like he's doing a Jim Carrey impression.
exactly. He's
Jim
being
Carrey
a parody
does
of
Jim
himself.
Carrey.
Oh, also speaking of his extended work, not to derail us and bring it back to Gay Panic, but I need to talk about the overconfident gay man sketch.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah, just we'll
From
touch.
whence
Yeah,
this
let's touch on
movie
that
came.
before we wrap up.
Okay, so the overconfident gay man sketch was, I was reading through the trivia for this movie, and it pointed out that he lifted most of the mannerisms of the Ace Ventura character from this Living Color sketch, which was the overconfident gay man, which was like, just again,
It's
like
just really bad.
the biggest gay panic, where it's just like this guy going around being like, is this the line? I'm a gay man. Is this the line for gay men? Are there only gay men in this line? And the guy's like,
Can I
"No."
remind you
Then
that I am a gay man?
yeah, and then and that's the whole joke, is him going around
Are
reminding.
you
yeah.
a gay man?
And it's the whole thing
I
is
would
going
like
around
some
reminding
French
people that
fries
he's
for a gay man.
sitting down and just being like, ooh, I'm gonna eat this because gay people need to eat too. I hope this feeds my homosexual palate.
Like, the joke is like, gay people keep shoving it in our face.
Yeah.
That's the punchline. And
Is this
like
what adults in the '90s thought gay people were like?
Yes, but also I just wanted to point out that if you watch that is also how queer people tweet now.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but we do it ironically.
It is ironic. Like, I just
Yeah.
bought some new shoes for gay people.
Hey Twitter,
These are
I'm
gay shoes because I'm wearing them.
I wear striped socks. I'm a programmer.
Just bought a homosexual Subway sandwich for homosexuals.
That is a false statement. All Subway sandwiches are homosexual by default. Only the
Be like a
soups are for
6 inch or a foot
heterosexuals.
long.
The soups are for the hets.
But I'm saying, like, because so basically what I want to get to is this film is like, even not just gay panic, but it is Jim Carrey doing a parody of himself doing a gay panic joke.
It feels like sort of 90s comedy stripped down to its most shitty, you know? Just
Yeah.
like bad slapstick, like funny faces, gay jokes, like
Gross out humor.
like transgender jokes,
Yeah.
Ableism.
He talking out of his butt.
and like fart jokes, talking out of your
Just-
butt, sex jokes,
dick and butt jokes.
like
Which
bad
could be
jokes
funny.
about sex. Like the jokes where the joke is just that you did sex in a movie that's for kids, or sort of for kids. Like,
Yeah, how did
It's
that
just
fly in a
bad.
kids movie? I watched as a child.
it's the
just, like,
90s. Well,
we
yeah,
all remember
this
that
was-
moment, like watching movies with our parents, and the fucking sex scene comes on, and everyone just like stares uncomfortably at the screen, pretending like just wishing for the moment to be over.
Oh god, yeah. Well, my mom would cover my ears and my eyes.
Good thing you couldn't hear the sex.
I think that the fact that so many kids watched this movie in 1994 is why our culture is so broken today.
Yeah, Ace Ventura led to 9/11.
Ace Ventura was a direct byproduct of the collapse of the Soviet Union and forever poisoned American culture since. And is fucking neoliberalism, man.
I want to talk about like the character that played the like trans woman. Like, I've obviously this is like for the end of the thing, but like the quotation marks trans woman, because that doesn't really apply. But like just some of the bits, like also this person was Mary Sean Young, also was cast as Mrs. Hyde counterpart to Dr. Jekyll in Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde, which is another movie on our list. So this is
Oh,
this
God.
is a cis woman who somehow got
Get hyped.
this is a cis woman who somehow got typecast as a trans woman, which is
That's who I'm trying to be.
which is just fascinating.
She also was Rachel in Blade Runner, though, so we stand.
I haven't seen Blade Runner. Can we do it? Can we do an
What?
episode? Can we do a Blade Runner episode?
All right, yeah, I'm down
Wait,
for that.
what? You haven't seen Blade Runner?
I have not seen Blade Runner.
Actually,
That surprises me about you.
I have not seen Blade Runner
Yeah,
either.
which is weird because it's one of those like trans people staples.
Like, it's not really very trans.
I actually
Let us
don't
know
any
if
striped socks
we're allowed
either,
to watch
so-
Blade Runner on this show and just talk about replicants
Like,
for an hour.
Maybe that'll be one of our Patreon goals.
I've seen it come up in lists of like trans adjacent movies somehow.
Well, it's like cyberpunk-y.
Yeah.
And like replicants as a concept.
I don't know, whatever. We can use it.
You haven't seen it.
We can use it as an excuse to talk about like trans people and transhumanism.
Let's
I'm
just
all
talk
for
about
it.
the 80s. We've now done an episode on the 90s.
We have to go
They were
back
bad, folks.
Yeah, we have to do 80. So make sure for next episode you have tons of cocaine.
It pisses me off that the movie from the 50s that we did is more woke than the movies from the 90s.
But that movie was actually directed by a trans woman or cross-dresser. The jury's still out. I'm not quite sure.
No one knows. I mean, it's projecting past identities with modern terminology doesn't work.
Bernie 2020.
Bernie 2020. But I think that like the 90s were, like we've talked about, like when this stuff got much more explicit, like when the undercurrent of transphobia and homophobia really kind of, like the wave broke, you know, and splashed us all with shitty movies like Ace Ventura. And we're still recovering to this day.
Yes.
We are drying off.
Well, I mean, the one thing I take solace in with movies like these is that they tend to, there's days where you look at the news headlines and you get disheartened with certain things that are out there, groups that are targeting us. Like
I love the news.
It's so great. I just love turning it on and seeing how I'm ruining the fabric of society. But generally speaking, when conversations are had about these, or like when people like, Jim Carrey in Ace Ventura, gay people being a punchline, trans people being a punchline, as that comes more to the surface, it does eventually go away because people move on, and it's a conversation about social acceptance. So if one thing, like as the trans jokes come up and they're being talked about now, or the trans panic in this case, usually it's a sign that things are going to go in a direction that is beneficial to us.
That's
because it's bubbling up.
That's the saddest thing, is that like we don't have to. It's not just about civil rights. It's the fact that we have to wait for cis people to get bored of us.
Yeah, and then they're just like, fuck it, fine, yeah. Because like we will keep pushing for like the fact that we need like to not die.
But I mean, just like at a certain point, we're gonna stop being interesting.
Yeah, and then they'll move on to some other group, but like we get the rights in
Yeah.
the meantime, and then that poor next group is gonna have to go through the whole fucking thing again.
Well, I mean,
Sorry,
ideally, we're running out of groups. Like, I feel like trans people must be the bottom of like some barrel that's being scraped.
Can we target
I
Freemasons
love
and people
to
who
be
are left-handed?
scraped off the bottom of the barrel.
Yes, we are the
You're
bottom.
making me feel so proud to be trans-free. Just like the pawn scum at the bottom of the...
We are just the most marginal of all identities.
100%. So I guess we'll wrap up here on this depressing point with just asking the question: how do we feel about this representation?
Is it good trans representation?
I think a better question is like, how do we feel about it? Because as we've said in the beginning of the show, it's all bad representation for the most part. So how do we feel about this one?
I liked that it was a bit more honest than Girl. Like
I think it was more accurate to the experience.
Well,
Yeah, at least it was completely honest about the fact that it thinks trans people are disgusting.
Yeah,
At
that's
least
my
who
point.
among us has not become a police commissioner?
It wears its heart on its sleeve. It says, trans people, fucking yuck. Like, that's like, not, it's not subtext, it's like the text.
That is fair, though. That is fair criticism.
That's like,
we are
there's actually a
yuck.
frame where the screen just changes from Ace Ventura's face to just trans people are gross. And I
wondered
that
about
honesty.
that scene. That was surprising. Like,
Yeah.
Because like a lot of these movies that we watch purport to be good representation and aren't, whereas this is not pretending to be liberal and woke. It's like, oh, let's just punch down today for like 90 minutes and have a good time. And we don't have a good time, but I like that they were honest about what they were trying to do.
No, it was good. I agree. This movie is basically, at least we knew what we were getting, and it was kind of shit from start to finish. So at least it wasn't like a good movie that had a shitty trans joke thrown in there. It was just a shit movie with.
Courtney Cox is pretty.
Courtney Cox is always pretty, though. That's just a given. But like, yeah, it was a shit movie from start to finish. The only good part, though, Cannibal Corpse inside the movie for whatever reason.
Oh yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
That was a good time.
See, I like the things that this movie got right. I like the part where it like accurately portrays that all trans people are criminals that are fueled by mental illness and trauma and have weird Freudian desires. Like the part where like she starts like making out with like Ace Ventura, like once he starts figuring things out, like that's very Freudian. And
she also kisses like the football guy when she's about to kill him.
About to kiss her like murder victim. So yeah, again, very Freudian, which is very nice and accurate. I appreciate that they did the research. Also, 10 out of
the part where all the cops immediately turn on her the moment they see her dick.
Yeah,
is very accurate.
We are true enemies of the state.
The moment she is outed.
Yeah,
gets
assaulted, and then the cops immediately send her to jail instead of the person who
all
assaulted
the cops
her.
are like on her side, and then she is outed, and then they all literally burst out of their uniforms and turn into anthropomorphic pigs, like Spirited Away.
Pigs are literal cops.
And
all pigs are cops.
Pigs
Sergeant
cancel.
Fuck. All right.
10 out of 10.
Yeah,
good
10
representation.
Out of 10. Would not recommend to family and friends. Perfect. Well, I think
can we do an actual good one next time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
I think there's a couple things that we can look up that are actually like decent movies. So hopefully, maybe we'll get.
Also, a recommendation. If you remember this movie from when you were a kid and you have fond memories of it, don't rewatch it. Yeah. You don't have to.
Just enjoy it for now. Like the only movie I would say still holds up from when I was a kid was Spaceballs. That movie still is amazing. Has nobody else seen Spaceball?
It's good. I mean, it's not the best Mel Brooks movie.
Oh, wait, what's the best Mel Brooks movie?
I mean, either like Blazing Saddles 100%, and then Producers second, and then Spaceballs third.
I would challenge you on second and third, but I would agree to number one.
Yeah, Spaceballs is good, but like I feel like the jokes probably don't land as well as you remember.
I don't know. I watched it like a month ago. It was pretty good.
Okay.
I like the Schwartz twisting. How I watched it as a kid, though, I have no idea.
I saw that as a kid, too. I saw it before I had seen Star Wars.
You're like, maybe Star Wars is the comedy ripoff. Fucking Jar Jar. All right. So that's this week's episode. Again, we were hoping to make it lighthearted. We ended up going on a bit of a trail, but I think it was a really interesting one to have. So thank you again all for joining us this week. Just a couple of little housekeeping things. If you head over to our Twitter page, we do have a coffee set up. We are trying to raise funds to get hosting for a year. We have managed to buy some time because our hosting costs have had to go up to $20 a month, which is SoundCloud's top tier. Thank you for those who actually did donate. We actually had 2 people donate. It may be the same person twice, but
love you.
Thank you so much. And if you DM me your name, I will definitely call you out on the show because that is amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. Every little bit helps. Also, too, we did hold a poll recently, and we did hear your feedback, and we're gonna do more skits. I'm just kidding.
More skits.
We're looking into doing a Discord server. We are going to appreciate your patience while we do this. There's a couple things.
Yeah, so the problem with the Discord server as a concept is I am very concerned that it will either turn into like a not safe for work nude swap group or a Stalinist versus anarchist versus Trotskyist like death match.
And I mean,
or both at the same time.
I was just say if we could combine those two, I'd be fine with it. But we want to do this right. We want to have a fun community for everyone to come hang out in. So we're going to spend the next little bit researching what does and doesn't work. If any of you have suggestions, feel free to DM us. But we are looking into it. And also a Patreon is going to be set up sometime soon. And we have some ideas for rewards, but we will get back to you at a later time.
Gaytreon.
Get the Gaytreon.
You know how the Nazis have Hatreon?
I was going to say,
we should make Gaytreon.
You have to suck a dick to enter. And anyways, thank you again for joining us. I'm Madeline Hops. I'm rabbit_dead on Twitter. I just fucking moved, so I ain't doing shit all except editing this and trying to settle down for the next few weeks. So there's that. I cut out the dead space. It's fine.
I love the dead space. I'm Amelia Blair. I am at Lavender Ashtray on Twitter. I'm just writing papers right now, honestly. Writing papers.
You're also taking a trip.
Crying, taking a trip later. It'll be good.
Crying in the trip.
I'm okay.
You're to travel to a different country and cry there.
Yeah. I'm excited.
And I'm Ricarter, RHICARTER. And my game studio that I co-own is putting out a game next month. We don't have a really exact release date yet, but we do have pre-orders available for it on Steam. And if you go to either my Twitter or look up Dead Genre Studios, it's a like Flappy Bird battle royale that's like vaporwave, and he plays dolphins.
It's pretty fucking
It
sweet.
looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's actually really fun to play as well.
So that'll be out in probably next month, and it's not going to be that much money. So if you want to go pre-order it, that would be great.
yeah, and
Support
also
trans
too,
game developers.
yeah, exactly. And also too, Ree will be then moving on to doing 3D furry porn art by commission. So
So
any of
that's
you
the-
who want
that's
some,
the
Send,
dream.
send request DMs now.
yeah, if you want to see that sweet YIF action, I believe that's what the kids are calling it.
YIF? What?
Dab on over. Look, I'm just on Urban Dictionary. I'm trying to figure it out. So yeah, yeet that meat. Anyways.
Thank you for this episode. Thank you for sticking around.
We love you all, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks. Thanks
Bye.
again.
Take care.